So I have a pastor at church, and he always starts out the sermon. He says, all right, get ready, get ready, get ready. So I think we're ready tonight. You guys ready tonight?
Yes.
Awesome. So we'll start off by telling you a story. I've told this story in past workshops, so if you've been to past workshops, you have already heard this story. But about 10 years ago, one of my brothers emailed my other 3 brothers and I and asked us if we knew what our cholesterol levels were. I guess he'd just gone to his primary care doctor. His primary care doctor went over his blood work, and his cholesterol was 226, which is a little high, but it's not that bad. But his doctor told him, you know, we'll keep an eye on it, but if it goes up, we're going to want to put you on cholesterol medication. And so my brother was sending out an email to find out if it was hereditary or genetic. He wanted to know if we had it, right? And so I emailed him back and I said, Joe, it is not hereditary. It's not genetic. It's your lifestyle. And if you figure out what's causing it, then you can figure out the solution and take care of it naturally. If you have any questions, let me know. An entire year went by with nothing. And then he sends out another email. Hey, just following up on that email from last year. Wondered what your cholesterol levels were. Mine came back at 246. So it started 226. 1 year later, it's at 246. So he wants to know if it's genetic. What's ours? And I tell him again, I said, Joe, it is not genetic, it's your lifestyle. And there's a few things that can elevate your cholesterol levels. And so I told him stress can do it, lack of exercise, and poor nutrition. And if you have any questions on it, let me know, I'll help you work on it. Crickets for an entire year. And then he calls and he says, all right, now I need to know what to do because it's 270. In 2 years, 226, 246, 270 in 2 years, right? So I said, well, first we need to figure out what's causing it, because if we can figure out what's causing the problem, we can figure out some of the solutions for it. But your body, here's what I need you to know, your body does everything for a reason. If it's hot out, you're going to sweat. If it's cold out, you shiver. If you cut yourself, it heals. That's the way the body's designed to work, right? And if your cholesterol is high, there's a reason that your cholesterol is high. So let's go through some of the reasons. And I started out again, high stress. Why does stress increase your cholesterol levels? Because if you're under stress, you're in a state of sympathetic dominance. You're in a state of fight or flight. And if you're in a state of fight or flight, you're going to release your stress hormones, your cortisol and your adrenaline. And LDL, is LDL considered the bad or the good cholesterol? Bad, right?
Oh,
and technically it's not bad. It's either high or low. LDL, without it, you drop dead. So there is no such thing as bad cholesterol. We just named it bad cholesterol because when it goes high, we have an increased risk of heart attack and stroke, right? So I said stress can do it because LDL is the precursor to the production of your stress hormones. So if your stress is high, your body's dumping a bunch of these hormones. The liver ramps up the production of those LDL cholesterols so that it can meet the demand, so it can produce more of those stress hormones. Does that make sense to you guys? It made sense to him as well. So I said, how's your stress? He said, I feel like my stress is pretty good. Like, you know, family's good, finances are good, job's good. And I would agree with him on this. My brother Joe lives a good life. Like, seriously. He has a beautiful house on 80 acres in Michigan. He also has a house on a lake where he spends 4 months out of the year putzing around on boats. And then he spends 2 months in Mexico every winter, so he doesn't have to deal with Michigan winters. How does that sound for a good life? I was kind of jealous. I'm like, I want your life, right? But the truth of the matter is that I agreed. I said, it's probably not stress. I said, so how's your exercise? He says, we exercise on a regular basis. We go for walks, we go for bike rides, we swim in the summertime in the lake. I said, yeah, but how about aerobically? You actually increase your heart rate and sweat. You're like, oh, no, we don't do that. I was like, oh, well, okay, so there's one area we can work. How about your diet? He's like, my diet's really good. Now, this is where I had to stop it, because this is where I knew better. Hey, I go back to Michigan every summer, and I spend time at this place on the lake. It's barbecues with hamburgers, hot dogs, chips, sodas, some beers. It's pizza, and it's subs. So I called him out on it. I said, Joe, you do not have a good diet. Trust me, I've been there. I know it. Unless you're changing it the other times that I'm not there, I know what you're eating. So I said, that's probably the biggest thing you can improve. So he said, well, what do I need to do? I said, start out just by increasing your exercise. Increase that heart rate, increase that respiration rate, sweat 15 to 20 minutes, at least 3 times a week. Then I want you to clean up your diet. I want you to go whole foods. Fresh vegetables primarily, fruits, beans, nuts, seeds, healthy meats, and smaller portions, right? Because, you know, when we sit down, we grill burgers. Are they 3-ounce burgers, 4-ounce burgers, or are they 8-ounce burgers? Like, they're twice as big as they need to be, all right?
Sorry.
So that's what I told him to do. Now, I also told him, listen, to go from 270 down to where you want it, this is not something that's gonna occur overnight. Like a minimum of 3 to 6 months, maybe even a year, and that's if you go hardcore. So he did, he went all in. He started exercising. He said, I exercise 4 or 5 times a week, 20 minutes at a time, increased the heart rate, respiration rate, and sweat every single time I went to exercise. He went all in on whole foods and almost all vegetarian. Now, he did have some meats, but he went primarily vegetables and then fruits, beans, nuts, and seeds. He had his cholesterol levels checked after 90 days. It went from 270 to 190. In 90 days, he dropped 80 points. Now, I personally think that's not a good idea. That's so fast that you're probably missing something, right? But the truth of the matter is that it proves the point that we often blame things on genetics. My dad had it or my mom had it. That's why I'm going to get it or I already got it. Does that make sense? Do we sometimes do that?
Yeah.
And it gives us an excuse for not watching the rest of our life. So that's why we're here tonight. I want to welcome you to tonight's nutrition workshop. And I want you to let you know that my goal is to give you some really good information that you literally going to say, wow, I learned something there. But more importantly, that you take it and you make 1 or 2 changes. How many changes?
One or
Okay,
two.
it'll be here, 1 or 2 changes, right? I don't need you to change everything overnight. I need you to change something. I need you to move in the right direction. Because what you're putting into your body is either fueling health and just wellness, or it's fueling sickness and disease. And if you can just make 1 or 2 changes from the information you learned tonight, it now has the ability to transform your health. Because my ultimate goal, my prayer for you tonight, is that not only you make these changes, but it improves your health span. And do you know the difference between lifespan and health span? Lifespan, the number of years you're on the planet. Health span, how many of those are good? How many of those can you do the things that you want to do and enjoy your life at a higher level? So, do you guys want a long lifespan, health span, or both? Raise your hand. Both, right? We want both. We want to be healthy for a long time, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to start out with what I consider the 2 most important concepts as they relate to nutrition. And the first one is, how do we move from toxicity to purity? The food that we put into our body is either clean and pure and runs our body like a high-performance machine, or it's toxic. And it's used for either cellular repair and energy, or our body has to figure out how to neutralize it or excrete it, right? So that's it. Everything you put in your body, fuel and cellular repair, healing and fueling, or we got to figure out how to neutralize it or get rid of it. So we need to move from toxicity to purity. Then I'm going to teach you how to move from deficiency to sufficiency. Deficiency, sufficiency. We need to make sure it's nutrient dense. We need to make sure that the things that we're putting in our body has all the minerals and nutrients and vitamins to run our body like a high performance machine. Because if it's deficient, we're moving away from health, right? So I want you to think of your body like a race car. Okay? So you guys are literally driving around in a race car right now. Now, a race car takes racing fuel. Now, racing fuel is sufficient, but if you put regular unleaded in it, it's not going to run as well. You guys agree with that? Right? So we want racing fuel, not regular unleaded, because regular unleaded doesn't have the same octane that racing fuel does. So we have to move from deficiency to sufficiency. We also want to make sure that that fuel is clean, right? So if your fuel is tainted, your car is not going to run as well. Or worse, if you put sugar in the tank, AKA cookies, candies, cakes, sodas.
Yummy. Where is it?
Put those things in the tank, your car is really going to struggle, right? So we want racing fuel that's clean. If we do that, we're going to run like a high-performance machine. If we don't, we're going to start replacing parts. But in the human body, we don't replace parts. We call that drugs and surgery. How many of you guys want to avoid drugs and surgery?
Yeah, here.
Yes, we want to live a healthy health span, right? And healthy people don't end up in emergency rooms as often, right? They don't have as many medications. So that's the goal. And then we're going to finish tonight by talking about the role that your nervous system plays in the digestive process. And you need to realize that your brain is controlling and coordinating all the different systems of your body. And as long as that's working well, your digestion is working better. And so we'll finish with that tonight. So how do we move from toxicity to purity? The first thing you need to realize is the difference between whole foods, processed foods, and refined foods. And I know that for some of you this is super basic. Hang with me here, it's too important, I don't want to skip it, right? But a whole food, it's as close to its natural state as possible, right? It can be fresh or it can be frozen, but it literally is the whole food, right? That's what whole foods means. So when you think about a whole food, if it had an ingredients label, it would simply state the product. It's an apple, asparagus, walnuts, salmon, right? So it doesn't need an ingredient label because you can look at it and say, I know that's an apple, right? But the difference between a whole food and a refined food is that a refined food starts out as a whole food. But what they do is they take the different component parts of that and then they make their food from that. So that would be an applesauce instead of an apple. Now, applesauce still has plenty of vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, right? So it's not that applesauce is bad for you, but it's not using the whole food. So what's it missing?
The skin.
Fiber.
I just heard it. It's the fiber. It is the peel, it is the skin, but it's the fiber that we're missing, right? So now all of a sudden, if we don't have enough fiber, in other words, we're moving from sufficiency to deficiency, right? If we don't have enough fiber, things are slowing down and we're increasing our risk of colon cancer. So we want to make sure that we're eating the peel when it comes to the apple. Now the difference between processed food and a whole food is, again, processed food starts out as a whole food. They break it up into its component parts. They use a portion of that to make their product, but now there's additives and preservatives. And so instead of an apple or applesauce, it's an apple fritter. Now, if you didn't have dinner tonight, I apologize, because that right there is making me hungry.
Lord have mercy.
I'll be honest with you, I think apple fritters are delicious, but it is a processed food, meaning it has the additives and preservatives. Why do they do that? Well, it might change the texture. It might change the flavor. It definitely extends the shelf life. That's why we do it. But the thing is that with processed foods, there's over 5,000 known additives and preservatives that we're allowed to put in our food in the United States. Think about that for a second. Over 5,000 additives and preservatives allowed in our food in the United States. And of those 5,000, 1/3 are known to be safe. 1/3 are generally regarded as safe, what they call GRAD, generally regarded as safe. It's literally a term from the federal government. And then 1/3 have never been tested. And I'm not saying they're all bad. I'm just saying I'm 100% certain they're not all good. You guys agree with me?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So now, the food manufacturers, the food scientists, and the marketing companies are masters of deception, right? So I often will say, for most people that go to nutritionists, I'll say, make sure you read the labels, right? Well, the problem is that if you don't really understand the labels, it can appear to be a health food. This is a great example. Nature Valley Crunchy Granola Bars. This has to be a health food, and here's how you know. It comes from nature, and it was grown in a valley. That's not what that means? Yes. Now, Nature Valley Crunchy Granola Bars. If you were to read the ingredients list, the first ingredient is whole grain oats. It's a carb. In your body, what's it going to break down to, doctor?
Sugar.
Sugar. That's exactly right. My primary care doctor is here tonight. I'm going to introduce you when we're done. So, all right. So, number one ingredient is sugar. What's the second ingredient?
Sugar.
Sugar. Canola oil. Does anybody know what canola oil is?
Comes from a seed.
It comes from a seed. No, I think you've been here before. You're not allowed to answer. If you've been here before, you're not allowed to answer. Canadian oil, low acidity. How many of you knew that? Canadian oil, low acidity. It's one of the biggest exports from Canada into the United States, and it's made from the rapeseed, which is literally an inflammatory oil. It's not a healthy oil. So now we have the first ingredient, breaks down to sugar. The second ingredient is sugar. The third ingredient is a low-quality oil. The fourth ingredient, yellow corn flour. Say it with me. What's it breaking down to? Sugar. Honey. At least it's natural. Soy flour. Sugar. Brown sugar syrup. Sugar. 6 of the first 7 ingredients are either sugar or break down into sugar in your body. So when you look at that label, is that a health food? No, but most people would get that off the shelf and think that it is, right? The general public does not recognize that that is not healthy for you, right? So I like what Joel Furman says. So I'm not a fan of make sure you read the labels. I'm a fan of Joel Furman. Joel Furman is a medical doctor who wrote about a dozen books. And if you read his books, they're brilliant. It's all about nutrition and how to heal yourself from diabetes and heart disease and all these different things. Raising healthy kids, right? He's got about a dozen books. And what he says when it comes to food labels, the most important thing to remember about food labels is avoid foods that have labels. That right there is so much better. But how do you do that? Primarily stay on the perimeter of the store. When you walk into a grocery store, the center aisles, what's on the center aisles?
All the processed foods.
All the processed foods. It's the boxes and the cans.
Yeah.
And if it's in a box or can, it's probably a processed food. As a matter of fact, I'd probably say 99% of them are processed foods, right?
Yeah.
So you stay on the perimeter. But even then, make sure that it's not in the packages, right? And it's okay to get some things in packages. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if you want to move from toxicity to purity, you have to get rid of the processed foods. It's fine to eat some refined foods, and then stay primarily with whole foods, right? But my follow-up question always when we get to this point is, are all whole foods safe?
No.
Why?
Dirty.
What I hear?
Dirty.
Dirty. Why? What else?
Out there.
Genetically modified. What else?
Preservative.
I hear
Yeah,
Preservative. Preservative.
The preservatives and these are whole foods, so there's no preservatives, but there are
Oh.
pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides.
Yeah.
They spray it on the plants, and the problem with that is that we can't always wash it off, we can't get rid of it, and sometimes it absorbs into it. So we have all of these pesticides that we're using, right? And every decade that goes by, a pesticide, herbicide, or fungicide gets pulled off the market because it's too toxic. It was toxic the year before. They just finally decided. But here's the thing, they replace it with another one. That's probably just as toxic. And it's not only bad for our health, it's bad for the environment. Everybody's reading about forever chemicals now. They're everywhere. They're in all of our water sources. The manufacturers are getting sued left and right by the government right now, right? So we need to make sure that we're doing our part to buy as much organic produce as we can. But what's the problem with organic produce? Price, right? It's the price point. It is 10, 20% minimum, 30, 40% probably average more, right? And sometimes even higher than that. So that's the big thing. So here's what I want you to do. I want you, and this might be the one thing that you take away. How many things are you gonna take away from tonight? One or two, right? One or two. This might be one of those things, right? What I want you to do is I want you to decide if you're gonna just add some things that are organic. Choose the ones that are on the Dirty Dozen list. How many of you know the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15? Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. There's a group out there called the Environmental Working Group, and it's EWG.org. Environmental Working Group, they rank everything, or they rate everything based off of its toxicity. So if you want to check your deodorant to see how toxic it is, go to this website, plug it in, and it's going to give you a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is the most toxic ingredient. I don't think they really list anything, maybe arsenic, but I don't think you can buy arsenic in the store. But you got my point. You can go to this website, you can determine all these different products, household products, beauty products, personal care products. EWG ranks it. But then every year they put out their list of the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. The Dirty Dozen, these are the things that it either soaks in more or we eat the peel, right? So in other words, we're gonna get a higher percentage of these pesticides and stuff on these. So if you think about it, you eat the outside of grapes, you eat the outside of apples and peppers and green beans and blueberries, right? Strawberries, it soaks in. I saw those, number one, right up there, soaks right into the strawberry. So if you're gonna pick and choose, this right here, you should get more organic. This right here, not so bad, right? Because they either don't spray a lot of it on it, or it has a peel that we don't eat. Give me one moment. All right, so that's how we're gonna go from toxicity to purity. Now we have to go from deficiency to sufficiency. So how do you know if you're deficient though? There's 3 indicators, there's 1 confirmation. The first indicator is that you have a diagnosed condition. If you were a sailor in the 1700s, sailing the 7 seas, and you didn't have citrus fruit, you'd have a problem. If you were out there for a few months, you'd start to have bleeding gums. Eventually your teeth can fall out, your eyes will sink back in your head, your hair would fall out, your nails would be brittle. But what they discovered is that if the sailor in the 1700s went out and sailed the seven seas, and they had citrus fruit, they didn't develop this condition called scurvy. Does anybody know what they would be deficient in if they were diagnosed with scurvy?
Vitamin C?
Vitamin C, I heard it all over the place. Good job. Yes, because citrus fruit is high in vitamin C. So if they sent the sailor out there with crates of citrus fruit, they didn't develop scurvy. Now, we don't have scurvy as a general rule in the United States, certainly, right? Mostly not around the world nearly as much. But there are a bunch of conditions we have that are very common. Anemia. And there's a lot of different forms of anemia, but the most common form of anemia, and I'm going to throw you guys a softball. You guys know what that means? If I throw you a softball, you hit it out of the park, right? Okay. The most common form of anemia is iron deficiency anemia. So if you have iron deficiency anemia, what are you deficient in? Nice job, guys. That's exactly right. You're deficient in iron. And the only thing you can do is increase your intake of iron. And most likely, if you're deficient, you can't even get enough of the foods that have it. You have to supplement iron, right, to get it up to the normal levels. But iron deficiency anemia, you need iron. How about Alzheimer's? Does anybody know what you'd be deficient in if you were diagnosed with Alzheimer's? Anyone? Magnesium. Magnesium. And I remember listening to this doctor speak. He's a doctor, he's a professor at a major university out in California. He's speaking to a few hundred of us. And I remember him saying, you know, there's one thing that you can do that will reduce your risk of Alzheimer's. He said, but there's another thing that you can do that will completely eliminate you ever developing Alzheimer's. And so he asked the group, he said, which one do you think you should do? And so I'm going to ask you, should you do the one that will reduce your risk of Alzheimer's or eliminate your risk of Alzheimer's? Eliminate, right? He said, but I don't recommend that because the only way to eliminate is to die young. So what I'm going to recommend is that you supplement magnesium if you're low. Because if you're low on magnesium, you're losing brain connections at an unacceptable rate and your brain literally shrinks. But if you take magnesium, you reduce your risk of developing Alzheimer's. Osteoporosis. If somebody's diagnosed with osteoporosis, what are they most likely deficient in?
Calcium.
Calcium, that's what everybody says. I hear lots of different answers now. Calcium is what I always hear when I ask this question, right? But the bone is made up of over 20 different minerals. Calcium makes up about 40% of the bone. That's why everybody thinks calcium, right? But what they showed is that if you supplement calcium, you do not decrease your risk of fracture, you do not increase your bone density, but what you do is you increase your risk of heart attack. Then haven't heard that before, right?
Yep.
Why is that, they say? Well, first of all, there's a lot of cofactors that determine whether or not calcium and those other minerals are going to go into the bone. I'll come back to that in just a moment. But calcium sustains muscle contraction. Magnesium is a muscle relaxer. So you've heard of milk of magnesia, right? So that's going to relax the muscles. Calcium sustains contraction. If you get too much in your blood, 8.6, and I'm going to get this wrong. Doc, help me out here. 8.6 to 10.4 milligrams per deciliter is the range in the blood, if my memory serves me right. If it goes outside of that range, if it goes high, it starts putting it in the smooth muscles. That's the arteries. That's the heart, right? And now we increase our risk of heart attack. So that's why calcium increases your risk of heart attack if you're just taking calcium. So what do you need to know about osteoporosis? All the cofactors that go into it. So the first thing that you need is a strong stomach acid. The reason for that is that your stomach acid is what's going to break down that food and strip out the calcium and all the other vitamins and minerals so that they're bioabsorbable or bioavailable. So your stomach acid needs to be somewhere around 2, maybe 3, but in that range, right? We need a really strong stomach acid, which is why when I first started giving this workshop, I had people say, "Oh, I get my calcium from my Tums." No, like, wait a second. You get your calcium from Tums. What is Tums? It's an antacid. Okay, and you think you're going to break that down and absorb it and get it into your bones. They did an amazing job at marketing Tums, and it really doesn't do you any good, right? So no, we don't get our calcium from Tums. So we need a strong stomach acid. The next thing that we're gonna need though is vitamin D3. And the reason for that is because when the food gets in our stomach, the stomach acid breaks it down, but then it goes into our small intestines. In our small intestines, we have all the broken down vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, but they have to get across the cell wall into the bloodstream. It's vitamin D3 that helps transport it from the small intestines across the cell walls into the bloodstream. Without enough vitamin D3, it's gonna not be able to transport as much, right? So that's why we need vitamin D3. Then we need omegas. The omegas now take it, so now the calcium and all the other minerals are in the bloodstream. They're floating through your bloodstream, and now they have to cross the cell membrane again, or the cell wall again, to get into the tissues and organs and cells so that they can be utilized. That's where omega-3s come into place. They transport the calcium from the bloodstream across the cell wall into the tissues. Then we need K2 and magnesium, because that's what helps transport it into the bone. Without the K2 and the calcium, I think I'll have K up there. It needs to be K2, by the way. So that's what's going to transport it into the bone. And then the final piece, weight-bearing exercise. The reason that you need weight-bearing exercise is because, as I said in the beginning, your body does everything for a reason. It sweats when you're hot, it shivers when you're cold. It's all self-preservation, right? Now, why do we need weight-bearing exercise? Because if you do that against the muscle breaks down, the body builds it back stronger, correct? So if you go to the gym on a regular basis, your muscles are stronger. It does the same exact thing with the bones. When you put pressure against the bone grows. In other words, it puts more of those minerals in there to be stronger. It's called Wolff's Law. They literally named a law called Wolff's Law that says pressure against the bone will grow, right? So that's why we need weight-bearing exercise. So that's osteoporosis. All right, any questions on that? Good.
Well, vitamin D we can have it now in this season, walking outdoors.
Pardon?
With us walking outdoor, we have a nice sunshine with vitamin D.
We got plenty of vitamin D on
Yes.
Saturday, didn't we?
Yes, and today.
Today we did. Saturday was a little rough. I don't know. Did anybody else kind of wake up and say, I didn't know this was happening?
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah.
surprise to me.
I know, right?
So
The
right.
second indicator is that you have signs and symptoms. So you have this as a handout, all right? So you have signs and symptoms. So if you read through that, I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but if you have dark circles under your eyes, if you have bleeding gums, it's vitamin C or folic acid. If you have hair loss, right? Spoon nails, that's iron deficiency and some B vitamins. Muscle cramping, magnesium, B1, B2, B6. So if you have any signs or symptoms, that is an indication that you can be deficient in some of these vitamins and minerals, right? It's not a guarantee, it's just an indication that you can be low on those. Indicator number 3 is that you're taking medication. When you take medication, your body has to metabolize that medication. In order to metabolize that medication, sometimes it gobbles up some of your vitamins and these different minerals. So you can look at this and say, if I'm taking an antacid like Zantac, vitamin B12, folic acid, vitamin D, calcium, iron, and zinc. If you're taking an anti-inflammatory, blood pressure medication, a cholesterol medication, you can look and it will tell you, oh, look, I might be low on coenzyme Q because I'm taking Lipitor. Does that make sense? So that's another way to indicate it. But there's a way to confirm whether or not you're low. Blood work. I just had my blood work done. Just went over it a couple weeks ago, in the past couple weeks. And so, just to let you know, it would be up front. My cholesterol's 246. It's right where my brother's was.
It's hereditary.
We'll talk about that more. All right, so we'll come back to that. All right, so blood work. If you have blood work done, but you want to make sure that you're having a full panel, right? You want to know what these things are. And if they're just doing a CBC, a lipid profile, you're going to miss some things. And the 3 things that I see that are most commonly deficient, whoops, going backwards, let's try going forward. Magnesium, omega-3s, and vitamin D. Now, magnesium, we're deficient in that for several reasons. Our food source does not have the same amount of nutrients that it did 100 years ago. And if you were to ask a farmer, do you put fertilizer on your crops? Most of them would say yes. And if you say, well, what does the fertilizer do? Well, it makes them grow stronger and bigger. Yeah, but in the soil, what does it do? It binds to the magnesium. And so now we don't get enough magnesium into our plants. So that's why we're getting more and more deficient in magnesium. Omega-3s, we're just simply not eating enough. Salmon, avocado, and beans and nuts, the things that are high in omega-3s, right? And in vitamin D, there's 3 sources of vitamin D, right? So the first source is your food supply. Are you eating enough foods that are high in vitamin D? If you are, great. That will help. It's not the whole story though. We also get sunlight, right? And the sun, when the ultraviolet rays hit the skin, it triggers the skin to produce the vitamin D. Now the problem is that we live way up here. Now they say if you live above the 35th parallel, which is just below the midpoint of the United States, if you live above the 35th parallel, you're not getting enough sun 6 to 7 months out of the year. We're not getting enough sun about 8 months out of the year, right? So we can't produce enough vitamin D year round. We can in the summertime, but not year round, to make sure that our vitamin D levels are high enough. So the last thing that we need to do is we need to supplement, but when you supplement, again, you have to make sure that it's a good supplement. I am not here to sell you supplements, but I will tell you that if you go to Walmart and Target and some of those other places, you're probably not getting a very good brand,
Yes.
right? Not very good at all. This right here, this is the stuff that I take. Liquid vitamin D with K2, right? So it has the K2 in it. Now here's why I take it. I already know it's sourced. I already know that it's triple checked with the third party source, right? I already know these things. But also this right here, let me see, this is $23. Now, how long do you think this would last you if you used the RDA? It's 1,200 doses. It lasts you for 3 or 4 years. That's how much is in here, for $23.
If it's a drop, how do you take it?
On your tongue, in your water, in your smoothie, on your salad, I don't care how you take it, just get it in your body.
You just need a drop?
Yeah, I put it in my water, by the way. And so now that's one drop is 1,000 international units. There's 1,200 drops in there. Now here's the thing though, again, if you're low on vitamin D, you have to take more than that to bring it up. You can't move the needle taking the RDA. You have to take more. So what happens, I gotta tell you this story. So this is John, he actually came to this workshop before 2019. He had already been to this workshop at least once. When he had his blood work done, his vitamin D level was, I think it was 24 is what his first one was in 2019. A year later, it moved up a little bit, probably around 28, 29 or 30 there, back down to 28 or 29 there. Now this is where he decided that he was gonna supplement, right? So he came to this workshop again in 22, and he decided he was gonna supplement here because he recognized that what he was doing wasn't working. And so he went here. Now, the normal range for vitamin D, they say is 30 to 100. Okay, so your vitamin D levels, when it's checked with your blood work, should be somewhere between 30 and 100. But I think the sweet spot is between 50 and 80. That's really protective. Vitamin D has over 200 chemical reactions in your body, and it is unbelievably beneficial for your immune system, not to mention getting that calcium into the bones, right? So that's vitamin D. But it took him 1 year to get it close to where he should be, right? So he had to take it for a full year to get there. Now, when is the best time to get checked for vitamin D? What do you think? No, it's right now. It's right now because it's never going to be lower than after you've made it through the entire winter. So this is literally the best time to have your blood drawn to check your vitamin D levels so that you know. And by the way, I am not a fan of taking a bunch of supplements. I take a couple, the ones that I know that I'm deficient on. But I also know that I'm deficient on it. And I would not take them if I didn't know that, and here's why. Some vitamins are water soluble. What does that mean? You take vitamin C, your body uses it, anything it doesn't use, it excretes out. You just made expensive urine, but you're not, from a health perspective, you're not in trouble. Vitamin D that's not true with vitamin D. Vitamin D is fat soluble. You put too much into your body starts to store it. You can become toxic in vitamin D. So you get your vitamin D levels checked, or you get these things checked, then you supplement for a little bit, and then you get it checked again. And then you make sure you're good. If you need more, you supplement, and then you get it checked again. But you should have your blood drawn once a year just to know your baseline, and then have it drawn again if you're going to supplement. Does that make sense to everybody? Don't just arbitrarily say, I think I'm low on vitamin D or magnesium or anything. Make sure that you know what you're low on. All right, so now, moving from deficiency to sufficiency, primarily eat whole foods, and then get some from vitamin D, supplement based on the blood work. How much? Magnesium, 600 to 800 milligrams a day. That's a pretty good amount. You can go higher if you're really low, but again, make sure that you're getting tested. Omega-3s, 3,000 milligrams per day. You can go higher than that. I know people that do 10,000. Mega dosing is dangerous. I don't recommend mega dosing. That's like vitamin C, 25, 50,000 milligrams. That's way too much, right? I don't recommend that. And then vitamin D, 3,000 to 5,000 is usually sufficient. But again, I have people that come into my office and say, my doctor told me to take 8,000 or 10,000. Do that for 3 months or 6 months and then have it tested because it was so low. Follow your doctor's recommendations, but you can't just take 1,000 international units and think that you're gonna move the needle. Does that make sense? All right. So now let's talk about the role that your nervous system plays in the digestive process. And again, the first thing you need to realize is that your brain is controlling and coordinating a lot of functions in your body. So your brain is literally saying, this is what I need to do here, this is what I need to do here to keep you healthy, right? So it's monitoring and regulating and coordinating the functions of your musculoskeletal system. Does everybody agree that your brain tells your muscles when to move? Yeah. Your cardiovascular system, it's literally directing the function of the heart, right? Now, the heart has its own pacemaker, so it will go on rhythm for quite a while, but if you cut the brainstem, the heart will eventually stop because the brainstem can only go, or the thing can only go for so long, right? So your brain is controlling, coordinating your endocrine system, your immune system. I remember when I first started out, we were talking about how the nervous system is kind of coordinating the immune system, the response to the immune system 30-something years ago, and that people were like, that's not true. The immune system's totally separate. And now we don't think that at all. Every medical field, every medical profession out there knows that the nervous system and the immune system are intimately related, right? And it's also controlling and coordinating your digestive system. So let me break that down for you. You have an apple in your hand and you're hungry. Your eyes see it. Well, there's no smell to it, so let's make it an apple fritter that just came out of the oven. Okay, so now you see it and you smell it, right? It's the optic nerve and the olfactory nerve transmitting information to the brain. It's the optic what? Nerve. It's the olfactory what? Nerve. It's transmitting information to the brain. The brain says, that looks good, that smells good, I think I'm going to start to salivate. It's the brain that tells the salivary glands to start to release some of that saliva. The saliva helps break it down, but then it goes, once you chew it up enough, it goes into your esophagus, right? The esophagus has this rhythmic, smooth contraction that's going to keep food moving through, otherwise it'd keep getting stuck, right? That contraction is coordinated through your nervous system. In the stomach is now sending information to the brain says produce more stomach acid. It goes to the small intestines where it's moving through, again, rhythmic contractions that keep it moving through your small intestines. That's where most of the nutrients are going to be absorbed across the cell wall, back into the body, and those cells and tissues and organs. And then it goes to the large intestines, waiting for elimination. And every single step of that process is regulated and monitored and controlled by your nervous system. And as long as the information gets from your brain to your body and from your body back to your brain without any interference, your nervous system will work really well. Your immune system will work really, really well. Your cardiovascular system will work really well. And your digestive system will work really well. But you can sometimes interfere with your nervous system by misaligning your spine. So again, spine from the front should be straight. So I know that all my patients know this. Spine from the front should be straight. From the side should have curves. Back and low back curve to the front. Mid back curves to the rear. If your spine misaligns in any direction, off midline, we call it scoliosis. I'm going to come back to that. Lose a curve, twist out of place. In chiropractic, and my chiropractic patients better get this right. What do we call those misalignments?
Subluxation.
Subluxations. Good job. A subluxation is a misalignment of the spine that causes nerve interference. I'm going to show you that up close. Look at that nerve right there. Watch what happens when I misalign that spine. See it? Got it? Coming back there. We're showing everybody. Okay, I know you guys have seen this before, but can you see? Oh, I just dislocated that one. See that nerve? Right? Got it? So now that nerve right there, right? So we misalign the vertebra, we put pressure on the nerve. And we don't even have to directly pinch that nerve. All we have to do is irritate it, inflame it, or stretch it, and it will change the amount of impulses traveling along that nerve. Now, wherever that nerve goes, that part of your body is not getting 100% of those impulses, which means that it's not functioning at 100%. And so when somebody said, prove it, I said, well, how do you want me to prove it? They said, well, just show me some literature. So what I did was I went to the old textbook of medical physiology by Guyton. Did you study out of that book? So it's in almost every medical school out there, not all of them, but, and by the way, I studied in the 7th edition, but it came out in the 50s, and now it's probably edition 13 or 12 or 15, I don't even know what edition it is. So it came out in the 50s. Guyton writes on almost every system of the human body. And this is what he writes about the nervous system and its relationship. Strong stimulation or irritation of the sympathetic nervous system can totally block movement of food through the gastrointestinal tract. Those nerves originate in the spinal cord between T8 and L2. So what he's saying is basically if you irritate those nerves, you're going to have a problem with your GI system, right? Does that make sense, everybody? And so then I had another patient that said, well, I have a daughter that has constipation. Do you think that you can help her out? I said, well, I don't know. I don't know what the cause is yet. But what I do know is that if she's misaligned, it can do that. And if she's misaligned, she's healthier not being misaligned than she is being misaligned. So bring her in, let's get her checked. So I went through an exam. I took some x-rays. This is the x-ray of her low back. She's 11 years old, came in January 2022, constipation for 6 years. Now she's only 11. She's been constipated since she was 5. Her pediatrician gave her medication. Didn't change it. Boston Children's, stronger medication. Didn't change it. Suppositories. If it doesn't work putting something down, put something up. Right? Didn't change it. Now, 6 years in, this child comes in to see me. I take this x-ray. It's kind of fuzzy, but basically, this is the low back from behind. Pelvis should be level, spine should go straight up and down. Pelvis is pretty close to level. It's just a little low there. But the spine is moving to the left at L5 and back to the right at L1. Now, what levels, if you interfere with it, can make things not work very well? T8 to L2, right? Right on line. So I showed the parents this, and then I also pointed out that this right here is the GI tract. You can't even make out the size of the intestines. Those intestines should be about that big around. It's literally all feces. Can you see that? All that bottom area, that's all feces, right? She's backed up. She's going to the bathroom every 2 weeks. So I showed the dad this x-ray and the daughter, and I said again, I don't know if this is the reason that she's constipated. What I know is that she's subluxated and it can be the reason she's constipated. So let's get her adjusted. I adjusted her and I said, I want you to bring her back in the next day so I can check her again. Came back in the next day. I said, how you doing? She's 11 years old. She's very timid, right? She says, fine. And her dad said, it was the biggest crap I've ever seen. We started adjusting her on a regular basis. 3 months into care, she's going to the bathroom every single day like clockwork. And when we checked her, we checked 3 things on first visit and follow-up visit. Posture, balance, and range of motion. And with your balance, we want to see if you're shifting to the right or the left. That's an indication you're shifting off midline. But if we add them together, it is your weight, right? I didn't want to tell you that before, so nobody wants to know their weight. But if we add them together, it's your weight. At the 3-month mark, she's 11 years old, she lost 12 pounds.
Wow.
Not fat, not water, feces.
Oh, the thing.
Isn't that amazing?
It is.
Yes.
And that is the power of chiropractic. Chiropractic does not get rid of back pain. Chiropractic gets rid of subluxations, which then get rid of back pain, right? We do an amazing job with musculoskeletal issues. But if you think that it's just about your back, you're missing the bigger picture of chiropractic. It's about your nervous system and making sure your nervous system is working well, because if your nervous system is working well, you're healthier. And that's my goal as a chiropractor for every person that walks through our door. So now, before we wrap up, I want to introduce a couple people. The first one is Phil George. I saw you right there. Okay, Phil. Phil's a biochemist. Think he knows a little bit about biochemist stuff? Yes. He's a biochemist. He's also a holistic nutritionist. Oh, yeah, health coach, sorry. His partner is Kelly Hamilton. She's an RN. She works at a local hospital. If I remember correctly, in the ICU.
ICU nurse at UMass.
Yes, we didn't want to say UMass here, but.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding, Phil. I just couldn't remember. So, yes, so she's an ICU nurse at UMass. She's been in practice, she's been a practicing nurse for a number of years. She's looking at all these people that are deathly ill in her facility. And she's saying, we got to do something better than this. So she starts to go back to school, and then she becomes a holistic nutritionist. And her tagline is, the power's in the plants, or the proof is in the plants. Which one is it, Phil? The
Can't
proof.
remember.
I think it's the proof is in the plants. Basically, she'll teach you how to eat whole foods, is what it boils down to. Now, they partnered together. They also have, if I can give you the kind of bigger picture, and Phil, you can correct me if I'm wrong. They have individual coaching, they have group coaching, and then they have this Q&A kind of a session at Route 12 Pickle in West Boylston. It's $10, it's once a month. If you want to get on his mailing list, or if you want to ask him questions afterwards, ask him questions. Find out about this program. If you want to start eating more fruits and vegetables, beans, nuts, and seeds, and restore your health. The second person that I want to introduce is Dr. Reka. She hates it when I call her Dr. Reka. She's told me 5 times to call her Reka, and I just refuse. I'm sorry, Dr. Reka. I can't do it. She's with her husband, Hardy. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
All right, okay. I met them, first of all, I was just looking at Facebook and they popped up in my feed in Facebook. And I was like, oh, what is this? I'm interested in this. So this is direct primary care. And it's right here in Westboro. She just opened up an office right here in Westboro. And she definitely looks like she's more holistic or natural in her approach. In other words, she has all the tools to do all the tests. She can prescribe the medications, but she can also teach you how to avoid some of those medications. And when we first met, we went to their office and we did a little interview with her, kind of a thing. And she told me a story about somebody that came in that had pre-diabetes or diabetes. She helped them change their diet and get off the medication and no longer has diabetes. That's the type of primary care that I want. I don't want to walk through a doorway, walk out with 3 prescriptions. I want to walk through a doorway to have a conversation. That's her practice right there. It's called Rhythm Medical. It's literally right around the corner. It's like 2 minutes from here, 3 minutes from here. And so she's going to stick around and answer questions as well. Because I think that we need to be connected with a group of like-minded individuals that are focused on our health, not our sickness, our health. And the only way to do that is to have the right team into place that can say, no, don't do that, do this. No, Joe, your diet is garbage. You got to start exercising too. And that's the accountability that you're going to get with these people. So now, let's wrap up. Oh, wait, before I wrap up, who wants to share their one thing or 2 things? Somebody's going to make a change. What's it going to be? What are you going to do? Say, eat better. He said, eat only vegetables. No, he didn't say that. Okay. So, all right. So, again, you got to think of that one thing or those 2 things. Do not leave here without it, right? Otherwise, you just heard some great information, and it will do nothing for your health. All right? So now let's wrap up. So how do you move from toxicity to purity? Get rid of processed foods completely. It's fine to eat some refined foods. Eat primarily whole foods, and make sure that there's as much organic and clean meats as you can. Right? That's what you're going to do. How do you go from deficiency to sufficiency? Again, what you're going to do is you're going to look at the things that indicate deficiency, but more importantly, you're going to get your blood work done. You're going to know what you're deficient in, and you're going to either eat it, that's my preference, eat more foods that have it. When it comes to vitamin D, you'll get out in the sun a little bit, not too much, don't burn too many times. You don't, as a matter of fact, you shouldn't really be burning at all, right? 10, 15 minutes in the beginning, 20, 30 minutes by the middle of summer. Make sure that you get the right amount of sun, and then again, supplement any deficiencies that you know that you have, so that you can move from deficiency to sufficiency. Again, if you're supplementing, you have to be well adjusted. I appreciate you guys coming tonight. I really thank you. I hope you took something away from this, and it's going to improve your health and your health span. God bless and good night.
Also, there's actually